Everything looks cheap because it is cheap. We're at that stage of capitalism where everything is about a bottom line. And not one person can call the shots anymore because there's usually a board of directors who is giving money to the company to run, and they want to make more money with the money they invested. So usually whoever's in charge of operations, it's their job to make as much money as possible by using whatever means necessary. And if they can't do it, well, they're going to get fired and someone else will. And the easiest way to maximize profit, you either sell more or you spend less.
One thing I try to teach people is that just because something is cheaper does not mean it's better, and oftentimes the quality is lacking. That's why it's cheap. For example, my dad will always buy cheap kitchen stuff, and he will pay the price every single time. Them little 50-cent paper plates, yeah, they will just fold when he put his steak on it. He tried to be cheap and buy some little trash bags, and as soon as he pulled it out the trash, it just exploded everywhere. And now you have to get another trash bag to pick up the mess that you made.
We eat whatever. I'm not looking at no prices. We just gonna swipe that card. We ball. We having a good time. But you let a t-shirt be over $10. I just can't do that. Like, we'll go out the country. Vacations, nice places, excursions, activities. We doing whatever.
I'm your host, Miss Bree, to this video series called What's Going On in the World. Everything is made so cheap now. I'm going to be sharing my hot takes on this, and I want y'all to do the same in the comments. Let's watch a few clips together to see what is going on.
Everything looks cheap because it is cheap. We're at that stage of capitalism where everything is about a bottom line. And not one person can call the shots anymore because there's usually a board of directors who is giving money to the company to run, and they want to make more money with the money they invested. So usually whoever's in charge of operations, it's their job to make as much money as possible by using whatever means necessary. And if they can't do it, well, they're going to get fired and someone else will. And the easiest way to maximize profit, you either sell more or you spend less.
That's simple economics. Businesses are designed to literally make profits. They say business is really just profits over people at this point because it's not what the average consumer can afford. It's how much you can squeeze out of them based on their need for that product or service. And when you work for that particular company, you are a part of the business, the integral structure of running and operating it, you better be a top performer because they're looking for a return on their profits as shareholders. You will be demoted, fired, laid off, furloughed, whatever the cutesy word they like to use nowadays, if you are not able to bring that company significant profits by the space that you take up. So there's this pressure from all corporations to be able to squeeze as much money as they can out of the consumer to make a profit on the goods that they sell. Do you think there should be laws or regulations in place that prevents this type of predatory pricing or ways in which companies can operate? Let me know your thoughts on this in general.
And in this economy, people are not selling more. So everybody's in the trend of cutting corners and decreasing manufacturing costs and hoping no one notices. And that way, the profits of your company is always increasing at the expense of loyal customers. And this is happening across the board. No one is interested in making clothes that are actually good quality and last a long time anymore. Everything is about making more money.
Is anybody selectively cheap like me? We'll go out, I'll go out, night on the town, you know what I mean? We drinking, we eating whatever. I'm not looking at no prices. We just gonna swipe that card. We ball. We having a good time. But you let a t-shirt be over $10. I just can't do that. Like, we'll go out the country. Vacations, nice places, excursions, activities. We doing whatever.
He's making tons of sense being selectively cheap. I think we've naturally over time, because of this economy, have become that way. Like, just think about the corners you've cut, the things you've spent less money on, such as maybe dining out, such as maybe taking long road trips or vacations, such as spending, adding things to Amazon cart you don't really need, putting stuff on Afterpay you don't really need. So I think that a lot of people have honestly become selectively cheap, and it's smart. It's just the best thing to do nowadays. There's always going to be few things you really put a lot more importance on. Like he said, I don't put importance on a t-shirt that's over $10, but I do put importance on experiences. Like, he will set aside that money and put it towards vacations. And that makes perfect sense. To each their own. Some people really value their quality of food like I do. So that's a category of expense in my life that I'm willing to slightly splurge more on, so that way I can feel good and have great health as much as I can. That's something that I really value, maybe over other categories of things like As much as I'm a girly girl in so many aspects, I don't really care about buying purses and shoes and all types of consumer goods like that. Not saying that it's not beautiful and I don't purchase those things here and there once in a blue moon, but those are corners I cut on because it doesn't bring me enough value. Nowadays, so many of us are selectively cheap, so I understand it. Comment down below, what things have you become more selectively cheap on? So what categories of things are you willing to spend a little bit more money on versus other categories of things you actually spend less on?
Don't matter, we outside. But them clothes I'm wearing on that vacation gonna be from Shein, Ross, Fashion Nova, right? I just can't do it. And another thing, gas. What I'm gonna do, not drive? I'm gonna fill it up. But them groceries gonna be great value. They gonna be the generic brand, unless it's like mayonnaise or, you know what I'm saying, ranch or something. Like, they gotta have Hidden Valley, gotta have Dukes. But other than that, like, I'm a pinch on some stuff, but I'm a spend on a lot of other stuff.
Why are things so cheap from China? That's a great question. It's cheap because there's a reason behind it. And typically people think like, oh, it's cheap because the labor is cheap. That's actually not true. If the labor is so cheap and that's the only reason the product is cheap, then why don't you go to the lowest labor rate? And China is not the lowest labor rate. To make something cheap, it's actually a very, very difficult thing to do. If you ever done product design or product engineering or manufacturing engineering, you understand how difficult it is to make something cheap. It is one of the most technical and sophisticated type of engineering and design to make something very inexpensive.
I would assume that to make something extremely cheap, you're going to first have to outsource the cheapest labor because labor makes up over 50% of the operating cost of any business typically, whether it's a service business or a product business. In this instance, he's kind of keeping his examples more based on product manufacturing. So first off, it makes sense to make sure to find a labor force that's as cheap as possible. And there are plenty of countries, specifically in Asia and even areas and parts of Africa where the labor can be as cheap as possible. I mean, pennies on a dollar for producing said effort to making a product. And then secondly, it would most likely be the quality of the product itself. So those are the two main ways that I'm going to assume, because based on research, that's how you cut down the quality of product. Like he said, China is not the cheapest labor you can hire for mass production. So it has to be systems and processes in place when it comes to the quality of the product that allows for it to be as cheap as possible. Just because you buy something that's cheap doesn't mean that it's good just because you saved more money buying it. Sometimes you end up having to purchase that item multiple times over and over again because it doesn't even last. But let me know, what things are you willing to cheapen out on when it comes to quality versus things you are not willing to cheapen out on? I'm curious to know, what's your type of consumer behavior, spending patterns when it comes to buying things that you want to make sure is quality versus items that you really don't care too much for.
In fact, if you can master that, you can make any kind of level of quality because you understand it very well how to make something in the least amount of cost and still deliver the product. So anyways, follow me if you want to learn more about how things are cheap and why you make it cheap. And to answer your question in the beginning, yeah, there's a lot of great quality stuff. If you drive a Lexus, it's most likely most of the parts are made in China. If you have an iPhone, you know where it comes from. Most of the parts are made in China, assembled in China, and designed in China too. So anyways, comment below if you want to learn more.
One thing I try to teach people is that just because something is cheaper does not mean it's better. And oftentimes the quality is lacking. That's why it's cheap. For example, my dad will always buy cheap kitchen stuff and he will pay the price every single time. Them little 50-cent paper plates, yeah, they will just fold when he put his steak on it. He tried to be cheap and bought some little trash bags, and as soon as he pulled it out the trash, it just exploded everywhere. And now you have to get another trash bag to pick up the mess that you made. He will buy them cheap ass forks, and as soon as you put in the food, the teeth will break.
His teeth are breaking off the forks. Now, this got to be the cheapest dad on the planet. I know that typically guys are a little bit more stickler for the price on which they pay for things than women are. Women actually make up a big percentage of consumers when it comes to purchasing products. That's just the way nature intended, y'all. Women love to shop, spend money, and oftentimes in household, they are the one that's actually budgeting and planning for the spending of what needs to be purchased. When it comes to the guys, they're constantly scanning for the cheapest, most useful item that they could purchase. I think it's just a part of their makeup, but come on now. He's picking up the trash bags and the trash is falling out the bottom. He's buying forks. You can't even take a bite without the fork breaking in your mouth. Like, he's just way too cheap. Like, there's a certain point where you have to actually make sure you buy something of quality so you don't have to keep being inconvenienced by the fact that it's cheap. She should just buy some stainless steel forks and just gift them to her dad and say, here you go, dad. I don't want you to suffer when you take a bite of food. It's getting ridiculous at this point. Maybe buy him some trash bags, girl, the kind that won't break open when he lifts it up out the trash can. Because to be honest, he's so cheap that he's hurting himself. And at this point, he just needs some help from his daughter. So girl, I think you should just help him out a little bit.
Try to stress to him, yeah, you bought these stuff for 50 cents and you got more, but because they're such bad quality, you have to keep using more. And at that point, you might as well invest in a better quality trash bag or paper plates or forks. Same thing with clothing. Y'all spending all that money on fast fashion when you can just spend that money on a quality piece that's going to last you for years. And if you can't fit anymore or you decide you don't want it, you can just pass it down or resell it. For example, when I was younger, my dad bought me a real leather coat, and eventually I outgrew it, but I passed it down to my cousins because it was a quality coat, and all of them wore it until they're like, we don't want this anymore, and they sold it.
That's the thing about buying things of quality, is it pretty much lasts forever. Like, she was able to pass down an article of clothing to her cousins because it was actually real leather. Now, if it was pleather, plastic leather, that thing wouldn't last long and it would just turn into cheetah skin like in 2.5 seconds. Even when you see sofas that are not made out of real leather, they break down immediately. So if you want to make sure you're not constantly spending money, it makes sense to invest in things that are quality for your life. You're going to be wearing clothes every day, washing them pretty often. So I would assume that you would want to make sure you buy a higher quality material when buying clothes. Doesn't that make sense? Let me know your thoughts on that.
People always got something smart to say when I make major big purchases, but notice how you have to keep buying that same item over and over again. I spent quite some change on these headphones, but I've dropped these in dishwater, puddles, etc., and they're still fine. Do that with your Five Below headphones and tell me what happened.
If you enjoy watching and want to see more, check out the videos here. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications because I don't want you to miss the next video.